Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel, breaking down Steve Sarkisian's weekly Zoom call, the pregame Zoom call on Thursday. Talk Texas OU and get Sark's final thoughts before kickoff. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our friends at Hayes City Store. We'll tell you more about Hayes City Store here later in the show. CJ, Sark said all the right things that at least I wanted to hear from a mindset standpoint. He said, I lost track of how many times he said it is not a business as usual week. He's felt that in practice. Whether that translates to the field on Saturday, we'll see. But at least from a mindset standpoint, that desperation, sense of urgency, however you want to label it, sounds like Texas practiced with that this week.
Yeah, we saw folks taking bets on the site, Jeff, whether or not Sark would come out and say, quote, it was a good week of practice. We feel good. He went a different direction, but he does understand the urgency that is ahead for this team on Saturday, right? The emotions are going to be high. Obviously, Oklahoma coming in undefeated with a single-digit number by their name. This means a lot to them as well in terms of where they will shake out in the playoff hunt. But for Texas, and for Sark specifically, this game keeps their season's hopes alive. And look, you fall to 3-3, you basically pack it up and move on to January, essentially. So Sark said that, hey, this team feels the urgency. They feel, obviously, the heat that is behind needing to win this game and perform well, not just for the internal side of the locker room, but for the remainder of the season. So he did check the boxes, Jeff. Now let's see if they carry that over to Saturday.
If you can't get ready for this one, then you may be dead in the water with no pulse. But it sounds like, at least from what Sark said, again, we're hearing the right things. We'll see how it plays out. CJ, the main topic of conversation this week is centered around the offensive line. And this is probably the most offensive line question Sark has gotten on a Zoom call or an availability period. He was asked about Neto Mozolo. He was asked about Nate Kibble, whether they thought about moving Cole Hudson to guard. CJ, at least based on Sark's responses, it sounds like they've kind of put everything on the table. Remains to be seen what it looks like on Saturday, but it doesn't sound like any idea is a bad idea right now for that O-line combination.
Yeah, it's interesting because, to your point, that probably was the most questions that we've heard about this offensive line since he arrived. And he had, about 8 or 9 guys in total in the building? After the Florida game, it makes sense why there are a lot of questions. And I do want to start with Nato because fourth-year guy, obviously a lot of expectations coming in, Jeff. He was asked, quite frankly, what does he need to do to get on the field? And he provided a pretty lengthy answer, but in a broad sense, right? Didn't necessarily single out Neto. He said, quote, I think for every player, we're always looking for consistency regardless of the position and the consistency in knowing what to do, then using the proper fundamentals and techniques to do it, then having the ability to adjust on the move when the picture changes. That's Neto, and that's every player on our team. That's one of the base requirements of playing offense, defense, and special teams, end quote. The big thing I took out there is the inclusion of knowing what to do. Because Neto, a fourth-year guy, has been in the system for 4 years, right? He was asked to be that guy entering spring, exiting spring, entering fall camp, yet we saw the week of the Ohio State game, that left guard spot was no longer his. It feels to me that inclusion kind of gives you a peel behind the curtain as to why we're not seeing Neto. But I'd like to get your thoughts on not just that situation with him specifically, but Sark's entire answer into why we've yet to see Neto kind of scratch that rotation consistently.
I mean, I think the fact that Connor Stroh opened the year as the starter, and really up until last week, we'll see if he starts on Saturday, the fact that he's been the starter, I think for this staff, you've got to earn their trust. And, some people may not like that answer, but coaches aren't going to put guys on the field that they don't trust to execute in critical situations. So I think it's as simple as that, CJ. Now, you can make the argument that, okay, as desperate as you are, and I've even said this on the channel this week, hey, as desperate as you are, do you just need somebody that's going to create movement and you'll deal with some mistakes? Maybe you're at that point now, so we'll see if that changes. But, the offensive line combination just has not worked this year. And I think the fact that Sark, even though it was a very short answer, just confirming a question, and they have thought about moving Cole Hudson back over to guard, which would probably, you'd assume Connor Robertson would be at center. So Kyle Flood doesn't rotate a lot, CJ. We know offensively Texas doesn't rotate a lot of offensive linemen. Maybe they start doing that a little bit more this week.
Hey, they're running out of time to do it. again, we go back to those 3 cupcake games and say, why were you unable to get combinations to test out different variations of that offensive line then? And now you're back against the wall. We talked about it. Texas right now is a hungry dog without food in front of it. How do they fend for itself? And to your point, it was a very quick answer. It'd say, yeah, we've considered it, on to the next. And all right, maybe that just isn't what they see as viable. Otherwise, I think we would have seen it, or at least seen it tested at some point, Jeff.
Yeah, CJ, I want to get to your question that you asked Sark, because I think this is valid about, I won't take any of your thunder. I'll just set the table by saying you asked him about the offense basically being away from home and getting off to a fast start, or at least settling in earlier than they did against Ohio State and Florida.
Yeah, in a game like Texas, Oklahoma, there are so many swings of momentum, right? It is on one side, you're feeling like the king of the earth, and on the other, you feel like the biggest villain. And for Texas, they've been to 2 hostile environments already. And I asked Sark, given the changes of momentum, given how the moods of this game can flip so instantly, why does he feel like he is confident that his offense can weather the storm? And he said, yeah, we've been tested. But ultimately, coming down to the quarterback, we've got to find ways to stay ahead of beating ourselves, essentially, stay ahead of the chains, stay on the field and move the football to allow ourselves to gain momentum offensively. And allow ourselves to find a rhythm. He said that he did not make the greatest play calls in Ohio State when they were on the goal line. Obviously, that backed them up in terms of where they wanted to be psychologically. Obviously, you don't score for 3 quarters. It builds up. It doesn't necessarily allow you to play freely, play with that confidence. He said, look, we got to make sure that we don't beat ourselves, and that starts with me. It starts with the quarterback. That starts with pre-snap penalties, Jeff. And I would imagine, based off of what we've seen through 5 games this year, Texas will have a handful this weekend in Dallas.
All right, let's thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Hayes City Store. There are very few restaurants that once you go to them, you just know right away it's a special place, and Hayes City Store is definitely one of those places. Scratch-made Texas comfort food is what they're all about. From the famous truck stop enchiladas, their award-winning chicken fried steak, the homemade desserts. It's all good. It's all made from scratch. They've got live music 6 nights a week, 50 beer taps, ice-cold long necks, tasty margaritas. They've got 11 TVs in their ice house. That is a perfect setup, whether you're talking about a Saturday game day or a Sunday game day. They've got the Sunday brunch every Sunday from 10 to 3. Hayes City Store is dog-friendly. They've got plenty of space for the kids to run around. So gather your whole crew. Get over to Hayes City Store. For more information, check out the website, HayesCityStoreTX.com. Hayes City Store, it's uniquely Texas. CJ, we've talked about mindset. We've talked about the offensive line. Sark did talk a little bit about the run defense and just making sure that edge is sharpened. And I wrote about that a little bit over at ontexasfootball.com on Wednesday, because I go to it a lot. People are probably tired of sick of me hearing about it. In the last 28 meetings between Texas and Oklahoma, 25 times the winner of the rushing yardage battle won the game. This is the ultimate line of scrimmage game. CJ, what is your confidence level, whether it's Hawkins or Mateer starting at quarterback for Oklahoma? Based on Sark's response today, what's your confidence level in the Texas run defense bouncing back and putting a much better product on the field than what they showed against Florida?
Yeah, it's moderately high. I don't want to say they're going to come back and hold Oklahoma to 30 rushing yards. That could happen. Oklahoma doesn't have a good rushing attack to begin with. But look, I need to see it, because look, you faced Florida, a team that also didn't run the ball well, and I think you didn't contain well. I thought you didn't get off the blocks on the edges well. You didn't tackle in space very well. So I need to be proven that this can happen the way that it was expected coming into the year. Now, I'm not giving up, but I do think this is a game where your guys have to stand up, and that's moving forward for everybody, right? Colin Simmons has to find ways. Oklahoma's down to 2 tackles right now. Their third swing tackle is doubtful for this game based off of the Wednesday availability report. That should provide an opportunity for Colin Simmons, for an Ethan Burke, who did not play a whole lot against Florida, to find opportunities to create pressure in the pocket, therefore forcing Oklahoma to run the football more and more. It also provides a big opportunity for Anthony Smith to continue to have big showings. Anthony Hill, who had 14 tackles in Florida, but necessarily didn't feel like his impact was to the level of Anthony Hill. So I do think it'll bounce back, Jeff. And I do think this is a big opportunity for that Texas defense to look around and say, we are good. now we need to go prove it. On the flip side, in Texas's own running game, we heard a question about Jarrett Gibson.
Yeah, Sark was asked about Jarrett Gibson, and kind of what we talked about. He's their short yardage back, and there just weren't a lot of short yardage opportunities in that game.
It felt like a cop-out, but I want to get your thoughts because it doesn't take a whole lot for your running back to stand in there on 1st and 10 and take an inside zone handoff.
Yeah, and I think this game is interesting, and maybe in a weird way, maybe this is more of a Jarrett Gibson game than we might think, because when you're playing that, Venables runs his version of the John Haycock inverted Tampa 2 flyover or whatever label you want to put on that defense, the 3 safety defense, Venables has his version of it. And the best way to attack that defense in the run game is to run it fast, downhill, and you can't dance, you can't swing it wide. You just got to hit it and kind of bury your head in there and get what you can. That's why Roschon Johnson, his ability as a runner was really good for this kind of to go against this kind of scheme. You need a pile mover. Jarrett Gibson, CJ, may be the best guy that's cut out for that style of football where, hey, just take the ball, put your head down, see what you can get. So maybe we do see more Jarrett Gibson this week, but the bottom line for me, CJ, Texas has to be better on 1st down. Even though there were a couple of sacks on 1st down in the Florida game, 10 carries for 7 yards on 1st down. If you're behind the chains that much against Oklahoma, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, again, the number 1 3rd down defense in the entire country. Only about 17% of opposing 3rd downs are converted against this Oklahoma defense, and that doesn't bode well, Jeff, for a team that just averaged close to 12 yards to gain on 3rd downs in the swamp against Florida.
CJ, I know you're not done on the channel this week, but as far as Sark's thoughts, this is the last time we'll hear from Sark before post-game. Your final thoughts after hearing the coach's Thursday availability. What's top of mind for you to leave everybody with?
Yeah, it's funny how, the questions to Sark, the conversation from Sark, everything regarding this Texas team has pivoted from the quarterback to the offensive line. And I think, obviously, that is the biggest question mark right now with this team. Can they weather the storm? Can they hold off what is a very intimidating Oklahoma front 7 to allow Arch Manning time? Because Texas should be with Parker Livingston. They should have a larger role for Emmett Mosley in week 2 this year, or in this weekend, excuse me. They should have opportunities that maybe they haven't had with the wide receiving game. Perhaps we see more Nick Townsend. Perhaps we see more Jack injuries in the passing game as well. But can this offensive line provide protection against that Oklahoma front? The last thing I will say, a little John Mateer conversation, because of course, right? But he said, look, whether he plays or not, that quarterback position for Oklahoma is what moves the needle in that building. That's what instills belief. He said, look, that's exactly what John Mateer does. Whether he's 100% healthy or not, him being on the field and in that huddle for Oklahoma is exactly what gives them optimism, gives them hope, allows them to function offensively. And so it doesn't really matter to him in terms of whether or not he's 100% or not.
Yeah, and I don't think it really matters either because, again, it's a line of scrimmage game, and the advantage Texas needs to nullify is that advantage Oklahoma has, the Oklahoma defensive front against the Texas offensive line. We'll see how that plays out on Saturday. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to Hayes, the City Store, for sponsoring it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you're not a member, over to ontexasfootball.com. Plenty of good conversation over on the site. Sign up right now and use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.